Hi, I'm Patrick Allen. I, along with my wife, own Patrick Allen Selections, a small importing company dedicated to bringing in artists and producers primarily from the south of France. So today we're talking about Domaine de Rancy. Domaine de Rancy is a small producer in the Roussillon, so in the southwestern part of the Languedoc-Roussillon of France, down towards the border of Spain. Domaine de Rancy is one of the last producers of Rivesaltes Ambré. So in the Roussillon, there are three types of Rivesaltes. The most common type of Rivesaltes is a Rivesaltes dessert wine produced from red grapes, primarily Grenache, made in the same way you'd make port. The second most common type of Rivesaltes is Muscat de Rivesaltes. The last type, and the Muscat de Rivesaltes is made the same way you'd make a Baume de Venise. The last type, which is the rarest type, is Rivesaltes Ambré, which is what Domaine de Rancy is famous for. Rivesaltes Ambré is a dessert wine made from white grapes. They pick the grapes, add neutral grape brandy, then put the wine into barrel and forget about it. So over the years, this wine spends in barrel. It acquires this amber color, which is what gives it its name, Ambré. But also over the years in barrel, it acquires fig and date and walnut and all these complex flavors and aromas. So there are very few producers that are still making this style of wine, and even fewer yet that are doing vintage versions of this wine. Rancy, they always make a current new old vintage, and then they also have a non-vintage blend that they sell. So right now their current vintage is 2001. The 2001 spent about 12 to 14 years in barrel, and over those 12 to 14 years in barrel, it just gets this amazing complexity that I described earlier. Their non-vintage is usually aged for about 10 years in barrel, but the youngest wine is usually about 4 years old. And that's why they label it as a 4-year, even though a lot of the wine in it is actually quite a bit older. The thing that Domaine de Rancy is most famous for are their very old vintages. So currently, the oldest vintage we're importing from them is their 1948, which spent 63 years in barrel before being bottled. That wine is incredibly intense, very dark in color, even though it's made from white grapes. What's interesting is because of Rancy's notoriety, they sell to a lot of the great restaurants around the world. There were a lot of Rivesaltes Ambrés coming out of cellars of somewhat dubious origin. So the region, which I find very progressive for the region, decided to make everybody inventory what they had in old vintages and then audited them. Well, at Rancy, a lot of the wines that they had in their cellar were put into barrel by their grandfather and even their great-grandfather. So they'd never really inventoried what they had. When they went through their cellar, the oldest vintage they found in barrel, still untouched, was their 1919, which now they're going to start releasing in 2019 as a 100-year-old Rivesaltes Ambré. Now, the thing that's beautiful about Rivesaltes Ambré is that they are indestructible. So once you decide to have a glass of Rivesaltes Ambré, you can pull the cork and then have yourself a glass, put the cork back in the bottle, put it up on the shelf, and if 6 months later you want another glass of it, it will be absolutely fine. Now, the classic food pairings for Rivesaltes Ambré are hard cheeses. You can do nuts and walnuts with them, of course. But the thing I love with Rivesaltes Ambré are desserts with cinnamon in them. So pecan pie, pumpkin pie, any of those fall desserts are an amazing match with Rivesaltes Ambré. In addition to those kinds of things, you can also serve it with things you'd have with maybe an Oloroso sherry, like membrillo, that quince paste that they have in Spain, or the almond cakes you get from Spain with the figs and dates compressed into them. So it's a very versatile, interesting food wine that is fantastic with fall desserts, but I also just enjoy a glass on its own. And because they're indestructible, I always keep a few vintages at home, and after dinner, if I feel like having another glass, I'll just have a glass of that, knowing that it's not going to go bad if I don't finish the bottle. So enjoy.